Professor Ghoshal and Professor Pramanik. This is Professor Parul Malik from IIM Sirmaur. A very warm welcome and thank you for connecting with us here today.
Thank you, Professor Parul. Very
Obviously, it
excited
is
to be
a
here today.
technical, I suppose. Thank you so much. I believe once we'll be having a campus, we'll surely have you here. And it'll be a pleasure to host you here at our campus at IIM Sirmaur.
That will be fantastic.
For sure. At Himachal Pradesh, that will be, we are actually awaiting our permanent campus. Right now, we are in our temporary campus,
Right.
but probably we'll be shifting. So a very warm welcome to everybody who has connected with us today. And thank you once again for accepting the invitation on behalf of IIM Sirmaur. So Sakshi, can we start now?
Yes, ma'am. Quickly, I'll just start. A very
All
warm welcome and good afternoon to everyone who has connected with us and joined us today. With great excitement, I would like to unveil the first Analytics Conclave of IIM Sirmaur, Anvay 2020-22, in collaboration with FinServ, the Finance and Economics Club of IIM Sirmaur, Horizon, the HR Club of IIM Sirmaur, and Datonics, the Analytics Club of IIM Sirmaur. The theme for Anvay this year is competing in the data-driven world. The conclave has been facilitated under the mentorship of Dr. Amrita Singh, Dean of Student Affairs and Professor of Finance and Accounting, Dr. Parul Malik, Professor OB HRM at IIM Sirmaur, who is also present with us, to officially introduce and our guest speakers, and Dr. Mohammad Hussain Kundru, Professor of Economics and Business Environment. Today, we have amongst us distinguished professors from top colleges in India who have made a mark in the field of econometrics and statistics, and we are privileged to have them share their experience today on the topic of econometrics, increasing relevance of econometrics for macroeconomics policy making in the data-driven world. The future leaders of IIM Sirmaur are looking forward to this insightful session and to this panel discussion. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Parul Malik ma'am to introduce our speakers. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sakshi, and a very warm welcome once again who have connected with us here today. We have a list of eminent panelists with us. So I would like to take this privilege of introducing the speakers. Our first eminent panelist is Professor Shalabh, Dean of Academic Affairs at the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. Professor Shalabh is the recipient of Vigyan Ratan Samman conferred by the Council of Science and Technology, UP. He has also received the Humboldt's Fellowship, Boys Cast Fellowship, Young Researcher Award from IISA, to name a few. Next, we have with us Dr. Phanindra Goyari, who is having more than 21 years of teaching experience in the area of economics. Dr. Goyari has completed his UGC Raman Fellowship period and postdoctoral research work at Texas Christian University, USA. Under his guidance, 14 PhDs and 16 MPhil scholars have been awarded the degrees. Also, we have Dr. Nilabja Ghosh, who received her PhD degree from Indian Statistical Institute. She completed her graduation and post-graduation from Presidency College, Calcutta University. Dr. Ghosh has been affiliated with the Institute of Economic Growth since 2002. Dr. Ghosh is an expert in the area of macroeconomics and statistics. Dr. Ghosh has profusely worked in the area of agriculture, rural development, food, and environment. A very warm welcome, all of you. Then we have Dr. Amrita Pramanick with us here today, who received her doctorate from the Department of Economics, Jadavpur University, Kolkata. Her specialization areas include principal agent models, incomplete contracts, microeconomic theory, and game theory. Dr. Amrita is also a visiting faculty at Madras School of Economics, Chennai. Finally, we have Dr. Ishita Ghoshal, Assistant Professor, Econometrics and Macroeconomics at the Department of Economics, Fergusson College. Dr. Ghoshal has worked as Assistant Professor at Symbiosis School of Economics. Thank you once again for connecting here with us today. I warmly welcome all the panelists and participants who have joined with us today for this very, you can say, fructifying experience that we'll be having. Over to you, Professor Ishita.
Thank you so much, Parul ma'am, and all the student coordinators. At the outset, I must congratulate IIM Sirmaur and all the students and the faculty members who are involved with this program to have, first of all, come up with something like this. And you have been doing a great job in the execution, I must say. So thank you and congratulations to all of you for that. Um, if I may just confirm if all the panelists have already joined in, Simran?
Ma'am, we are waiting for Shalabh sir to join, and I guess Nilabja ma'am is
Nilabja.
facing some issue right now, so we can wait for the next 2-3 minutes to start, if it's
Sure.
fine.
Let's do that. Um, so then we'll start with the introductory comments and then move on to the panelists once everyone is here, right? That makes sense. Sure.
Phanindra sir is here with us. Sir, can you check your audio and video once?
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Perfect.
Okay, okay. Right now, share file share is not activated.
So you can send it to any one of our teammates, and we'll share it during your presentation.
If I can handle my own PPT, that will
Okay,
be,
I'll
yeah,
share the rights with you when you have
yeah,
to present.
yes, yes.
So Nilabja ma'am is facing some issue with the connection, so she'll join sometime. By that time, Ishita ma'am, econometrics is a field which not a lot of people are aware of. Only the people who have been associated with statistics or economics or mathematics are, slightly aware of it. Not a lot of students are, maybe aware of it. So maybe if you could, by that time, throw some light about what econometrics is and, what all methods do we use from the, bird eyes view of what actually econometrics is.
Sure, Sakshi. So when we talk about econometrics, whether as a student when we are exposed to it for the first time, or even as a faculty member when we are teaching it in class, one thing that becomes very apparent very quickly is that it is a combination of a lot of things coming together. So I mean, definitely it's not a standalone subject or area of study. Let's first put it across. So whenever we are the main idea of econometrics is to apply mathematical and statistical tools taken together and towards analysis of economic data in particular. So we will, of course, go through a lot of these techniques and methodologies in the panel discussion. Um, but the first thing that we realize is when we are talking, as students of economics, let's say, whenever we are studying about a theory or a hypothesis or a law, it becomes crucial and important after a point in time, not to just understand it conceptually, but in order to be able to critically analyze them, we need the help of a mathematical model and along with that, some support and evidence from data, right? So when these two things come together, what it creates essentially is econometrics. And in that, of course, before we delve into the actual modeling techniques of econometrics, which is essentially statistical applications, but with that becomes very important for us to also understand the mathematical modeling behind the theory or the hypothesis, right? So like for all those who have been students of economics, you would realize that that is precisely the reason why we take you through a mathematical economics paper, a statistics paper, and then econometrics is introduced, because that is how the chronological flow naturally comes in. So whenever we are talking about an economic model, which has, let's say, its own set of assumptions and the framework that is there conceptually, from there, we move on to constructing a mathematical model which would represent the relationships among the variables that are under consideration. Um, in expressing that relationship, naturally, equations come into the picture, which would explicitly tell us, let's say, talk about the direction of the movement and the extent of the dependence and the movements. And in order to then check all of these relations based on real life data, we need the statistical approach. So when all of these things come together, we have an econometric model. And naturally, then what happens is there are these kind of distinctions that come in, that when you're studying, for example, because we are concentrating more on macroeconomics, I'm going to take an example from there. So say you're talking about the consumption theory by Keynes, right? So there you are considering the relationship between only two variables, like how consumption is dependent on income, for example. So that is where your focus is only on those two variables and that one single equation, which is going to kind of express the relationship between the two of them. On the other hand, if you consider the same consumption function, but as a part of the entire goods market, so there you realize it's only a part of the entire story, right? There's a lot more to the story. So you'll have your investment function, you will have your external sector, and all of that is making up the aggregate expenditure of the economy. So then when you look at those relationships, you will see that there are these individual pair of variables which have those relationships are important to understand. And at the same time, it's important to understand how the overall picture is turning out, like, a set of equations. So I think that is the first way of kind of distinguishing the kind of methods that we use in econometrics, that whether you are concentrating on a single equation setup, where, I mean, of course, in my example, I was talking about only two variables, but there could be many more variables which are, let's say, affecting a particular variable. So then a single equation econometrics and then simultaneous equation econometrics, that becomes one of the main kind of distinguishing factors between the two sets of methodologies. Second thing that comes in probably is with respect to the nature of the data. So as you know, any variable can be represented either in the form of a time series data, that you are capturing the data across time for one entity, or you could be capturing data at a particular point in time across different entities, which we call as the cross-sectional data. Or we have the pooled or the panel data, which is a mix of both, that data collected across time, across cross-sectional units. So again, depending on these three types of data, the way we would treat each of these types of data and the models that would be applicable and appropriate for them would also be different, right? Another kind of distinction comes in when you look at whether the data that you're dealing with is qualitative or quantitative, right? And even, I mean, and this is like, when we're talking about a single equation model, for example, you could have, your dependent or independent variables being qualitative or quantitative in nature. So again, depending on which variable is qualitative and which variable is quantitative, we would again have a bunch of different methodologies. So the typical regression model that is introduced to students right at the beginning, that is where your, ABCD starts from for econometrics. That is mainly applicable when you have your left-hand side as well as right-hand side variables to be both quantitative in nature. Similarly, if your independent variable is qualitative, but the dependent variable is quantitative, we usually revert to an ANOVA kind of modeling. If your dependent variable is qualitative, but independent is quantitative, then we have the logistic regressions, right? The logit, probit, and the tobit models. And finally, if both variables are qualitative in nature, then we resolve to a chi-square kind of a setup, right? So many a times that, as educators of econometrics, and I think all my panelists here would agree with me when I say this, that we find it very interesting to note a common thing all across, where, of course, right at the beginning, what you're getting introduced to are the typical regression models, which is your classical linear regression model, right? Now, if the students don't kind of, keep an eye out or keep in mind the fact that this kind of a model is just the beginning of the world of econometrics, right? But it doesn't mean that all sorts of data are going to fit into this kind of a model. So the choice of model, the fact that the concept of choice exists, that you cannot blindly pick up the regression model and just kind of, apply it all across to all sorts of data. And I think that's the biggest endeavor that educators of econometrics would be focusing on and trying to capture all across the world. So then overall, an economic model getting converted to a mathematical model, and then you are looking at data that is being collected, Then depending on the nature of the data, depending on the nature of whether you have the nature of the mathematical model, whether you're looking at a single equation model or a multi-equation model, all of these things taken together would eventually tell you what would be the most appropriate way of modeling your data and how to go ahead. So I think that entire experience is what we would call as econometrics today. And of course, it's ever evolving.
Very well explained, ma'am. Now we have Shalabh sir and Nilabja ma'am joining with us, so we can go ahead with the panel discussion as well.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So welcome to all the panelists. So we are here today for the panel discussion, which is going to concentrate on increasing relevance of econometrics for macroeconomic policymaking in the data-driven world, right? Now, all of you who have gone through the profiles of our panelists and also were present here during the introduction, I'm sure you understand by now how a variety of experience and practitioners we have with us today. So keeping that in mind, we thought that, the following is the way we would go about it. So Dr. Shalabh is going to talk about how statistics and data science would play a role in the formulation of policies. Particularly, he would talk about artificial intelligence and how it is getting incorporated within data analysis, a little bit about forecasting techniques and how the features of economics are ingrained in econometrics. Then we will hear from Dr. Goyari. He is going to speak about macroeconometric model building. He will talk about some of the methods and issues and problems related to estimations and applications, particularly in economic policy formulation. Next, we will hear from Dr. Pramanick, Dr. Amrita Pramanick. She would mainly talk about the game theoretic approach and how the microeconometrics functions, like the drawbacks, I mean, the lacuna that cannot be covered by AI and big data. She would be talking about that. And in particular, she would also touch upon RCTs, which are the randomized control trials. Then we will hear from Dr. Nilabja Ghosh, and she will speak about forecasting and data collection methods and the things that we need to keep in mind about data collection and issues raising out of that. And she will specifically talk about the agricultural data system. Right? Then we will have a little bit of open discussion for a few minutes, and post that we are going to open up the forum for questions and answers from students. So I would request now Dr. Shalabh to start with his talk.
Okay, friends, it is a wonderful gathering, and I always enjoy to be among the youngsters. Well, now the age of your age is like the ages of my sons and daughters. But being in this business of this teaching, I'm always handling the students who are between 17 and 25 years old for the last 25 years. So that is my real fun when I start teaching or discussing or arguing or fighting with my own students. Right. So that's the beautiful journey which I'm going to start here. You see, forget about this econometrics. I don't know any econometrics, believe me. I don't know any modeling. People talk about very big models, statistical models. I don't know anything about it. Let us try to think in a very simple way. When I say that when you are trying to deal with statistics, you have to be a very good social scientist. You have to observe what is really happening around you and in your society. If I ask you, suppose I am your teacher and I ask you that, okay, I'm going to teach you a course, and then my grading will be as follows. So let me try to build up that. How do you think about the modeling, so that what Dr. Ghoshal has explained you, yeah, these things are the soul of the modeling. But before that, we need to construct the body where the soul can be inserted. Right. So the soul is a complicated affair and body is a very simple affair. So let us first try to create the body, and then whatever other speakers are going to say, that is going to create a good soul or a bad soul. So, okay, suppose I say I have to, as it happens in ITs and IIMs, that we have to give the grades in terms of A, B, C, D, F. Now I say, okay, all those students who are wearing a blue shirt, they will be getting a grade A. Anybody who is not wearing a tie will be getting a grade B. Anybody who is not wearing a black coat, he or she will be getting a grade C. Will you accept it? I will try to raise a question and answer because many one of you are not here. Most of you will say, I think everybody will say no, that's not acceptable. Okay, I change my goal. I try to say, okay, I will take some quizzes, some exams, and then I will say, okay, some assignment, I will grade your assignment, I will give you 20% from the assignment, 30% from the quiz, 40% from the mid-semester, etc., etc. So basically, I'm trying to take the average of all the marks, whatever you have scored in various examination across the year. And then I will say, okay, anybody who gets more than 80% marks, that candidate will be getting a grade A. Anybody between 70 and 80 will be getting a grade B, and so on. Is this acceptable? The answer will come yes. So now my question to you is this: what is your objective? I am not here to teach you. I am here, actually, whatever we teach in the class, this is hardly used in the real life. But whatever we teach, the way we teach, that always helps all of you in solving the problem in the real life. So if you try to see what are we going to do, we are going to make you understand how to take the good decisions in the life, because everybody wants to make the CEO, wants to become the CEO of the company. Nobody wants to become the chaprasi or clerk of the company. So that is now the statistics comes into picture. How are you going to take a call? So first try to decide your objective, what you really want to do. My objective is this: okay, I have got a batch of say 100 students, and I cannot give them a tuition or coaching, and I cannot entertain one by one. So I have to do something so that finally I can grade them in the grades of A, B, C, D, F. And the interpretation of those grades is that grade A means the good student, grade B is the better student, and so on. So now how to get it? So I simply try to give you some exercise. I try to teach you something, and based on that, I try to give you some exercises, assignments, etc., etc., and then you get some marks. And then I try to take a weighted arithmetic mean or arithmetic mean, etc., and then you become happy. My question is, why are you happy? Why you become happy with this methodology of grading rather than the first one? First answer is that because there is some mathematics involved. You know that what mathematical rule you have to follow in order to achieve the final scores. Number one. Why do you always want as a student that you should have more than one examination and there should be continuous evaluation? Because you believe that if in one quiz if you cannot do well, then in the next quiz possibly you will do better, and then the loss of the first quiz can be compensated. What is this? You are simply trying to repeat the observation so that the variability in your final decision is less. Now you try to think that, okay, how I can improve my grades. Everybody say, okay, you work hard, attend class, etc., etc. So tell me one thing. Now I ask you and I promise you, and this is an open challenge to you all. I am claiming that all of you know econometrics better than anybody of the panelists present over here. Tell me one thing, in your institute, when you try to opt for a course, what do you observe? You observe the course content, or you try to observe the faculty who is going to give you grades more easily? I know the answer. You also know the answer, and you have not even met the faculty, but you try to ask your seniors and you get different types of statements, comments, etc., etc., and based on you try to create a personality of that faculty without even meeting him or her. Based on that, you try to take, अरे यार, अगर इसका course लिया तो I will get a grade A, my CPI will increase from 7 to 8.5, and if I take that course, that teacher is not going to give me, the CPI will fall. Do you do or not? Okay, switch off the videos and say yes or no to yourself. Answer is yes. Everybody does it. What are you going to do, man? These are different types of modeling. As a teacher, I'm trying to do a modeling so that I can classify my good, bad, better students in different categories, whereas you are trying to do the modeling in which you are trying to forecast about a teacher who is going to take the examination and going to give you the marks after 6 months, but you know that what grade are you going to get. So that means you are going to find out a relationship between the output and input variables. Input and output variable, these are the two ingredients of any modeling, and you are simply it's not even modeling, you are simply trying to find out the relationship between, okay, if I go to the class of this teacher, possibly I will get a grade A, otherwise I will get a grade B. So this is what? This is only you are trying to use some statistical tool inside your brain automatically, because God has gifted this power of making or creating the models to every human being. So you have very easily used, very quickly you have used this all these input variables in, or actually you have thought about the input variables, output variables, you collected the data very quickly without doing without even going into the field. You fitted a model using some statistical technique you even don't know, but your brain has told you some value, and that model turns out to be good. So that means whatever the calculations you are trying to do to find out the relationship between the input and output variables, this is modeling. Now the question is whatever you have done in your mind, this has to be explained on the piece of paper using the mathematical tools, because you yourself had not accepted my first proposal to give the grades by the color of the shirt, but you need some mathematical things, because once the results are mathematical, everybody will believe on it. So that is this is how statistics comes into picture. Econometrics, people think that it is only for economics. Econometrics is for each and every subject. Either this is mathematical science, biological science, medical science, engineering science. If you come to IT, I can show you anonymous application of the same tool which we teach you all in the name of econometrics. Econometric does not mean only economic. That was the old time when you used to think about it. Now, when you are trying to come on this aspect of modeling, now you need the input data, output data. Earlier, you used to go to the field and try to collect the data. Now you use a Google form. So this data collection approach has changed. Now even you are not using the Google form, your Google app on your cell phone that is giving you the millions and billions of tons of data every second. Millions of billions of gigabyte and petabyte data is being stored from everyone's cell phone on the Google server. That helps you in finding out the route that you call as Google Maps. What is that? That is also a model. You want to know from your institute to railway station or bus stand you want to go. That takes the data, that fits the model, and it gives you the model. So now this is the condition where you are simply going to find out the relationship between input and output variables. For that, you have to use some mathematical tools so that you can convince the world. Otherwise, nobody will be convinced with your outcome. Now, this is your choice whether you want to use an economics, policy level, or any other type of modeling. Now, when you come to the policy making, now the era has changed. People want from us an automatic way of doing the modeling. For example, I can share you one live example. One of the very important ministries in government of India, they contacted us, and their idea was very simple. They wanted to know that how many people in this country they are making complaints about from different parts of India about different offices. The role was very simple. The person is trying to give a complaint. Suppose you are getting in Sirmaur. Suppose there is some problem in your institute and everybody starts writing an email to the director or somewhere in the country, to the president of the country. Suddenly they say there is a change in the pattern. That suddenly from this particular point, the number of emails have suddenly increased. So now they want that as soon as the number of mails increase, there should be a mathematical modeling which can predict that there is going to be a trouble. Please go there and try to solve the problem. If you try to see, you have used here the natural intelligence. Now, when you are trying to use this natural intelligence through the programming, that becomes your artificial intelligence. So now, when you are talking of the econometric model, it is not only the data. You want to collect the data automatically. You want to do the statistical modeling automatically. And you want a system where the system can tell you what is the outcome. Based on that, you have to use your natural intelligence to take the correct decision in the correct time. So now for this, there are various statistical tools, mathematical tools. There are different conditions under which you try to use different tools. What Dr. Ghoshal was just telling you about different types of independent and dependent variable where you try to choose the tool. So that is equivalent to when we have a body temperature, doctor gives the scalpel. When we have the pain in the stomach, doctor gives us the different medicine. So depending on the conditions, you can have different types of statistical tool, which will give you different statistical model. And in particular, here people are more interested in economics and the policy making. But whether this is policy making or anything, the tools are going to be the same. Statistics is going to be the same. Time has changed. We have big data. We want artificial intelligence. And by the time you join your job, possibly there will be some more expectation. So you have to be dynamic with every subject. So I think I will stop here. I have just given a very broad background in the next step in the last 10 to 15 minutes. Hope Dr. Ishita will take it forward in the right direction, possibly what you want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shalabh. We will, of course, come back to a lot of these points in the Q&A and the follow-up session also. So moving on, Dr. Goyari, can you start your talk now?
Hello, can you hear me, my voice?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're audible.
I have prepared a small PPT. I think now I have got a share. Yeah, I can share it. All right. So I think this PPT is visible to all.
Yes, yes, sir. We can see.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Ishita. Your introductory remarks were very useful, very excellent. And from Dr. Shalabh's presentation also, I have come to know many things. Now, respected moderator, co-panelist, and all participants. At the beginning, I must thank the members of our team Anvay of IIM Sirmaur for organizing this very important panel discussion. Now, in my presentation, I would like to speak on this macroeconometrics model building. It's a brief history. It's brief history, a few issues, applications, and economic policy formulation of the country, and some persons, institutions involved. At the beginning, again, I must admit that although I have been teaching econometrics and applying econometric tools and techniques in my research, on this particular topic, macroeconometrics model building, I have not done rigorous research. I was teaching one course, model building and simulation in economics, to my master degree students. While teaching, I learned all these issues and topics. So based on this, I'm presenting here. Now, at the beginning, Dr. Ishita has already explained these things. Like everybody wants to know what is econometrics. There are many definitions in the econometric books, and if you do Google search also, you will get lots of definitions and many definitions. I have just picked up only two here. First one is econometrics is that branch of economics, which is basically concerned with empirical estimation of economic relationships or quantitative measurement of economic phenomena. Now, when we speak of measurement, we need tools and techniques or instruments. And these tools and techniques or instruments are brought from mathematics and statistics. Then we can have this second definition, that econometrics is a branch of economics, which uses mathematics and statistical tools to analyze economic phenomena or economic theories, etc. Then what Ishita was telling at the beginning, econometrics includes three things: economic theories, mathematical and statistical tools. Now, again, Dr. Shalabh has already mentioned that econometrics now is not a monopoly of economics discipline only. Many disciplines, medical science, physics, even sociologists, political scientists, management, everybody is using. And very interesting, in the world of Nobel Prize in economics, these 8 economists have won a Nobel Prize in economics in the field of exclusively econometrics and econometrics topics. This term, econometrics, it was popularly used during 1930s. It's a Ragnar Fisk, who was one of the first Nobel laureates in economics in the year 1969. He coined the term econometrics in the year 1926. That is what we know from many textbooks. But available sources are also telling that one Poland economist, Paweł Szympa, he also defined and introduced the concept of econometrics in the year 1910. But that article was in Poland, regional language. So it was earlier not in English. So now econometrics as a subject is around 100 years old only, compared to many traditional subjects. But it is growing every year, and it will grow more. And again, Dr. Ishita has already mentioned that when we are using or applying econometrics methods, we need estimation methods. And the oldest well-known method is this OLS, ordinary least squares method. So before 1950, that was very popularly used, even in macroeconometrics model building, and other methods were like maximum likelihood, limited information, maximum likelihood, etc. But after 1950, many tools were developed, like two-stage least square method in 1961, then three-stage least square method by Zellner and Thel in 1962, and this time series econometric tools and techniques, they became popular during 1970s, and 1970s onwards till now. Many time series tools have been used by economists and other academicians. Now, when we speak econometrics, broadly, objectives can be classified into 3: structural analysis, that is interpretation on analysis on the structure of the model. It can be single or multi-equation. And very important is a second objective, forecasting of variable, like forecasting of GDP, forecasting of inflation, forecasting of any income, investment, etc., any variable. Everybody is interested, not only individual person, but even policymakers, company owners. Mainly outsample forecasting. Then third objective is a policy evaluations via simulations or repeated experiments. That is becoming very important, especially for macroeconometrics model builders. Now, major benefit of macroeconometrics model building is this policy analysis, policy simulations. And I'm giving one example here. When we are making or building one macroeconometric model, let us say for India, we have to divide the economy into different sectors: agriculture, industry, services, foreign trade, etc. And one, let us say now in GST regime, goods and services tax regime, we have different rates for different goods and services. Suppose in the next budget, Government of India is planning to introduce only one tax rate, let us say 10% for all goods and services. Now, we will be interested to know what will be consequences, effects on different sectors, different persons, different market conditions, etc. Using macroeconomic model, if we have estimated results, these effects can be examined on different sector, different person, different agents. What will be change in income? What will be revenue collection for the government? What will be factor allocations, import, export, investment, etc. So that is good. Again, once you have estimated model, not just 10% change, you can analyze several rates. 1%, what will be effects of 1%, 10%, 20%, etc. Then based on whatever is required, whatever is optimal, we can select the best one. That is the beauty of macroeconometrics model building. But if you have only one sector, let us say agriculture or industry, it becomes partial analysis. We cannot understand what is happening in other sectors. Now, coming to practical applications, some of the students were asking if we have like companies, private companies, or even government organizations, particularly related to finance, money, banking, or insurance. I think every company, every firm has been using at least small amount or big amount of econometric model results for forecasting or data analysis. Let us say even as a company manager, I will be interested to know what will be sales revenue next year, next to next year. If I invest this much money, what will be my GDP next year? So this kind of analysis we use or many are using. Now in Indian scenario, using application of macroeconomic model results, I personally know these two listed here, number one, number two. These are practical applications. When we had planning commission in India, they asked in Institute of Economic Growth and the Delhi School of Economics research team to do macroeconometric model analysis. And from this model, simulation results were, recommendations were used to make macroeconomic projections for 9 5-year plan in the year during the period 97 to 2002. And second example is for 11 5-year plan during 2007 2012. This same planning commission of India, they asked various organizations, not just one, various organizations, research institutes who are doing this macro modeling, do different modeling, and results will be used to incorporate not just forecasting, but to examine like how global oil prices will impact different sectors in the economy, how inflation can be controlled, or how inflation will affect, how production processes will be in changing. All this to examine these different teams were working, and these research papers were published in one book form. It is still there in Amazon and other marketing platform one can buy. So I think 4 research institutes were involved: IGIDR Mumbai, IEG, NCR, and Institute of ISI Bangalore. Now, in macroeconometric model building, generally these are framed in a simultaneous equation framework compared to a single equation framework. when we are using these macroeconometrics models or simultaneous equation framework, we are supposed to use three-stage least square method or full information maximum likelihood method for best efficient results. But this method involves estimation on reduced form compared to structural original form. And if you have lots of equations from different sectors, lots of variables, now getting reduced form becomes difficult. That is one technical problem. And data problem will be there because we will be using several variables of several years. We may not get required data, and also time consuming.
Dr. Goyari, I'm really sorry to
Yeah.
really sorry to come in. If you could
1
wrap up
minute.
within the next
Yes,
1 minute, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So John Tinversen model is considered as the first model in the world. And Professor Klein took lots of initiative to develop many models. And in India, this model by Narasimham is considered as the first model. Of course, it was PhD thesis. And many PhD students came out later under the guidance of L.R. Klein. And initially, most of the macro models, not only in India, outside also, they were concentrating on forecasting. But now, in recent period after 2000, their macro models are handling not only forecasting, but like inflation, how global issues can be examined, inflation issues can be examined, all these various issues are incorporated and examined. Many institutions are involved, like this IEC, RBI, IGV in macro models. And I'm coming to the last phase. With computing facilities becoming better and better, and software packages for econometric estimations are becoming available, which can handle many variables, many equations. So more persons are going to apply, and there are more prospects of applications of econometrics and macroeconomic results in the policy making, not only for company decision making, but also even for national level policy makings. So with these few words, I stop here. Thank you. Over to Ishita.
Thank you, Dr. Goyari. So now, having heard from Dr. Shalabh about how statistics is to be utilized for decision-making purposes, and then from Dr. Goyari about how macroeconometric tools and techniques, what are they, when they came into existence, and then after that, how those applications work out. We will now move on to understanding another aspect of econometrics, another, you can say, area where it is very strongly used. Can I call upon Dr. Amrita Pramanick to speak about small data sets and econometrics involved thereof?
I think she has to unmute.
Okay, yes, sorry for that technically. Thank you, Ishita.
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes, please go ahead.
So since we are on a platform where we are supposed to be addressing the students mainly, I'll try to keep this brief and crisp, the technical aspects for the exploration for the students. Dr. Goyari and Dr. Shalabh has taken you through all details and finesses of the econometric tool as a model, the statistical background to it, and how it might be helpful in forecasting, structural analysis, and policy evaluation at macro level. What my interest would be to take you through the new kind of approach, the post-1960s approach, the most modern approach, what's being dealt with right now. Now, see, inferential statistics that Dr. Shalabh has been taking you through, we call it inferential statistics because it is used to conclude or draw inferences on the base of a data set through statistical methodology, through systematic methodology, some inferences about that data set. So there are a few questions that we need to be answered. So those are the central hypothesis, the null hypothesis that we try to address. We test the data set on the basis of our hypothesis and try to draw some conclusive remarks about if our questions get answered properly. Now, the central assumption of the data set that we usually, the traditional use of the data set that we have behind this kind of an inferential statistical methodology is that the data set is normally distributed. Now, this normal distribution has some privileges to work with, some convenience to work with, definitely, sure, but we cannot be assured of the normality of distributions each time. Now, data fitting, as we call it, or normalization of the data set is an assumption which might be a very ideal case to achieve, but often, more often than not, it is not achievable practically. So we have to place data sets that are small, that either we have to have a data set over 30, theoretically, to satisfy certain conditions of normality or generate a normal-like distribution, or we have to have the data set is fixed, characterized by that normality distribution. So in case neither of the assumptions work through what we are supposed to do, so what is the problem here, the main problem that I am addressing? What will we do? What kind of approach shall we take when we have small data set at hand and we do not have the advantages of an underlying normally distributed data set? What are we going to do under that condition? Now, let me call this a non-well-behaved data set. All through your basic microeconomics, people who have been taking up economics have definitely gone through basic microeconomic papers 1 and 2. So they are well aware of the basic tenets of microeconomics. So the basic tenet of a microeconomic theory is to construct a paradigm of decision making on the basis of a certain usually observed characteristics of the agent, decision makers that we have in our economy. So what I am going to, the way I am going to motivate my perspective here as being, not being an econometrician, but being an applied microeconomist, theoretician, as well as an applied econometrician. So I would like to rest my case on a few details that we found are of some interest. Now, under certain conditions, we really do not have the privilege of a large data set. When are these conditions? Mostly when it is not achievable to have more than a few subjects. What are these cases? Let's just take an example from the biomedical field, that is clinical experiments. Those have some strategic importance in medical fields. We cannot initiate a kind of a treatment that is new to the entire paradigm, is not still accepted, is still under experimentation and do not have declared result or established results. So we cannot have that run across a large patient group. And that is when we have to run trials on small subject cohorts, and that creates a certain pathological condition, lab circumstance, when we are dealing with very small data set. So that is one condition that motivates the case of a small data set. And the microeconomics perspective to this, we have only adapted the methodology, such kind of a clinical methodology to experimenting certain theories very recently, like it's within a span of the last 20 years. But definitely biomedical sciences have given us the opportunity to look beyond our our traditional view of large databases and forecasting on the basis of that. Secondly, it might be very costly to implement certain kind of treatments. By treatments, what do I mean by treatments? Treatments might be any kind of policy, learning-based policy, education policies, health policies, some kind of a medical treatment it can be, some kind of a learning model it can be certain policy that do not have a guarantee to generate results on mass scale. So we are running pilot projects. So it might be very costly to implement a policy. For example, we have been looking at several RCTs through the last 20 years, thanks to Dr. Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo. We have seen large-scale implementation of randomized control trials across India in social fields, social sectors of education and health. And we have seen how, inducing a girl child into education can be really materialized. This policy can be really more implementable if we provide some incentives. Now, in a few minutes, I will take you through the incentive structure, the kind of theory that is the flavor of the day. It's a very recent exploration in research fields. But before that, let me just take you through the technical details. So it might be costly to introduce a mass to this kind of a policy. Any kind of policy that is, that doesn't, generate guaranteed results, that might be costly to implement, that might be risky to implement, that we are looking at a population which has sensitivity to these kind of policies that are sensitive in nature, that we cannot really randomly apply on a mass scale. So we are looking at policies that are concerned with defense. We are looking at policies that are concerned with strategic management, local management of resources, environmental issues of corruption, and international relationships, of course. So we are looking at specific local kind of data sets. We are looking at policies that are implementable on small scale and cannot be generalized for large data sets. So these are the situations where we want to stick to small data sets. Now, small data sets have a different way of getting handled through econometrics. We, as Dr. Goyari has taken us, that policy evaluation is a central focus of econometrics, and policy evaluation over the last few years have changed. The procedure or the methodology of research has changed. We have been, for quite some time, we have been studying structural breaks. If we have, for example, the recent case of the COVID-19, so it has been around for 2+ years right now, and we do not have a large data set at our disposal to just give us a real insight into the structural break that it has generated across different sectors. For example, our central hypothesis can be education at the primary level before COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. If there is a certain structural break that we can notice in terms of attendance or in terms of enrollment of students into the primary level of education, pre and post-COVID situation. But look at us, we do not really have a large data set at our disposal. Why there is also another issue of revelation of data. Non-revelation of data is another issue that keep us restricted to small data sets. So how would you go ahead? How would we as policy makers or policy researchers would go ahead in these situations? The easiest way to do is to maybe, there is a lot of examples where DID models, that is the difference in difference models, has been applied, and recent researchers also use a lot of non-parametric methodologies vis-a-vis the parametric methodologies of econometrics in such cases. But an interesting way forward, now I am going into the microeconomic perspectives. So we want our policy to be efficient. We want all our policies are definitely, targeting certain sustainable development goals, poverty reduction, social sector, education, health, everything. All these policies are definitely welfare inducing. But for the last 50 or 70 years of independence, we have noticed a quite lot of failure in these policies. And where are we going wrong? A macroeconomic policy is just initiated and may be implemented, but we have not really considered the acceptability of the same. We have not considered the local variations, or we have not considered the local incentive structure of the people for whom the policies have been made. People should be, allowed to self-select or self-induce themselves into such kind of policies so that we have a proper efficiency measure of policies. So now we have this individual decision making. We are trying to make policies more individual relevant rather than mass relevant, and that is the new technique of or approach of micro-theoreticians to take a bottoms-up approach. We are looking at an approach where it might be, as we microeconomists call, incentive compatible for subjects to induce to induce them or self-select, for them to self-select a certain kind of behavior, a certain kind of a decision that the policy targets them to take. So we are not imposing them, or we are not, burdening them with a certain kind of policy and asking or demanding of them to behave in a certain specific kind of a way. We are actually improvising our technique, and we are making it more self-selective on the part of individuals. So that is the approach where we try to influence their individual decision making and try to make the policies more incentive compatible. So they self-select the policies rather than we as policymakers imposing them with those policies. So, coming to this kind of a strategic methodology of policy making or policy research, it is of it's of great importance that we lay our focus on game theoretic models, to lay our focus on principal agent models, where or incentive theory, models of incentive theory. Now we are trying to find out what can motivate or what cannot motivate a certain kind of behavior. We are trying to understand individual behavior, and in that way we are trying to make the policies more relevant and more implementable or more efficient. So we have a complicated structure, obviously, corresponding to this kind of research. But we are definitely have had some certain positive results from the past few years of research, that this kind of research has given us some perspective away from the macro level approach that we have been taking so far. For example, let me take you through some of the new areas of research that has been being explored recently. So, as I said, that regional development is a very interesting kind of area, and the students were interested in the demographic sensitivity of the population in policy research. Yes, we do have, as I said, that a policy cannot have a mass scale approach. A policy certainly will deliver different outcomes in different regions where there are different resources. There are local variations in the demography, in the geography, in the entire resource allocation of that region. So we have to develop local incentive-based, local resource-based, human as well as geographical and natural resource-based policies that might be sustainable in themselves. One aspect also that I would like to focus here is that our policies are financed majorly by taxpayers' money and aids from international sources. So we have to understand that this money is costing us, it is costly. So we have to make a efficient utilization of the investments that the policies are trying to achieve. So that's why I think that one has to take into account the kind of behavioral variation that different people from different areas might exhibit, and how the decision making might be different, and take that into consideration before we can really initiate a policy. So areas like urbanization, areas like regional
Dr.
development.
Pramanik, I'm really sorry to be doing this, but if you could wrap up within the next 1 minute, we're really tight for time.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
So regional development and poverty eradication and conflict theories, and there's a long list of such researches. So I would really focus on one specific two specific kind of researches. Microfinance, an example for you, how this as a mass scale policy has come to be right now. Just 30 years back, it was not so. In the 1990s, microfinance was a brand new concept, and nobody was there motivated enough to take that concept. But slowly down the line, in 30 years, we have really saw some good researches that have shown that when applied, when we are running RCTs, microfinance, microcredit being applied in certain group, in a treatment group vis-a-vis a control group where it is not induced as a treatment, we have seen marked difference in the decision making, in the well-being, in the overall development of people, and their freedom from the vicious cycle of poverty. And down the line, in 30 years, microfinance is a great policy right now taken up by different countries. So we definitely have some strong ground to say that, yeah, the bottoms-up approach, the micro decision makers approach is a more valid way. Second application that I would like to really focus on is provisioning of public goods by private institutions. An example of this, the corporate social responsibilities. So we are actually calling in the private sector to contribute into social welfare schemes, and to initiate a more efficient way of implementing welfare schemes. So these under what circumstances these kind of schemes might be takeable and more efficient are still open for exploration, still open for research. So these are right grounds the students must be interested to explore. Thank you, Ishita. Thank you for sorry for overshooting the time, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amrita. So it was fantastic the way you laid out how exactly why we would need this another alternative way of looking at models, and theorizations have also need to change accordingly. So thank you so much. It was lovely. So now we will move on to Dr. Nilabja Ghosh, and she would be talking about mainly forecasting, data collection, and special emphasis on agricultural data system. Nilabja ma'am, if you could start your talk. Nilabja ma'am, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Yes,
Good
yes.
evening. First of all, I thank the organizers, not just for inviting me, but for bearing up with this. I don't know, it is an internet problem or whatever it is. But anyway, I have a chance to speak on the mobile, but I wanted to show some.
Dr. Ghosh, just to request, if you can rotate your this phone.
Okay, okay.
If we keep it vertically, yeah.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, this is actually I had some PowerPoint. Estimation of crop production in India, data-based and hybrid approaches. Now here this is actually an application, actual application in policy field that will give an example of all the earlier discourses you heard. And this is, see, first of all, let me just say these are the topics I will touch on. This is data and timely information, how important it is for policy making. The system in place for agricultural statistics. This is the the FUSL and the model which we use. where I am personally involved, and the transition we are going through, because this is now the world of data analytics. So it is going through a big change and some future prospects. So as you may know, the policy objectives of agriculture these days for development, I'll just make some broad points. One is to enhance farm incomes. That has become very important. Earlier, for many years in our 1960s and 70s, food insecurity was a big problem. There was a shortage of food, but after Green Revolution, we have surplus. So, but the farmers still remain very poor, and they're a large section. As you know, recently we went through a lot of trouble regarding farm policies. So this prime minister had declared doubling farm incomes. Well, I won't use the word doubling, it's enhancing, let's say. Whether we can double or not, I don't know. Then because of environment, there is a focus on sustainable practices, judicious use of inputs, water, and the efficiency of resource use, as my earlier speaker also said. Then this climate change, because of that, the climate resilience is also very important, especially after our meeting in Glasgow recently. Then the market sensitivity, the market for agriculture and the whole market is getting globalized. So the farmers also have to be sensitive to market, can't overproduce or underproduce. Then we have a food security intention, always lurking food insecurity fear. And we have a sustainable development goal SDG commitment towards food security. Then we need reasonable prices for farmers and consumers. This is called the knife-edged problem of price policy. That is, higher price is not good for consumers. There's a lot of protest, but lower price is again harmful for the farmers. And you can connect it to inflation also, because if there is a shortage of food, then prices will go up. Okay, maybe this is a demand supply gap, but still, a whole economy is involved with this. So the point is that now we need a sound database and timely information for policy making, and this has become more and more important every day. And we need to know the responses of production in any field. I'm talking about agriculture, to economic and natural stimuli, and so that the farmers and the other operators, private sector, etc., and the government can do informed planning. They have to know the latest information, and then land use, input supply, credit arrangement, marketing, procurement. All these depends, will be more efficient if you get timely data. Now, thing is, what happened, let me see, they say that usually in agriculture, we get the production estimate. This is very old system. It was there from colonial times and we continued it. So actually the production estimates would come very late. Then we improved it. Of course, there were several committees set up, and we have the NSSO, the CSO, and other statistical, ISRI. So to improve the system. But thing is, by the time the data comes, it becomes too late for the correct policy making. And today the world is very dynamic, so I don't know how soon is timely. It has to be almost real time. So this is an information has become a key tool for planning, and there is a need for continuous data inflow. And actually, we are moving towards that. You may know Reserve Bank and Finance Ministry, all of them give, continuously they are monitoring and bringing out GDP estimates and other estimates. In fact, CMI is sending us daily update of the state of the economy. So there's a need for this monitoring of the economy. And especially in food, you have to, if you by chance you are falling short in the food, you have to have an early idea of that. So you can negotiate for imports, because at the last moment, if you go to the import market, international market, the prices will be high. And, we lose our bargaining power. Similarly for exports also. We need good prices for our products. So we need timely outlook of the economy and the agricultural economy particularly, and managing the inflationary scenario, the food security, procurement. Government procures grains, it has to be ready with how much buffer stock they will do. Procurement, their whole agencies are involved, and now the supply chains are there. They also have to prepare how much they will buy, how much they will store, how much they will process, etc. So early estimates, and also these early estimates of agricultural production will feed into the agricultural GDP and in turn to the national GDP, gross domestic product. So we need it, and now we are bringing out quarterly GDP estimates. So this is the importance. Now, so let me just say a few words of the system in place. As I said, the system was already there, but it used to come out very late, very late. When we started this project, we used to bring huge piles of old publications and take down the data by hand. And they used to be 5 years, 4 years lag. Production, irrigation, land use, whatever we use, the data would come in very late. Even now at the district level, it is quite late, but I would say it has improved a lot and most of the data has been computerized. Now this is, till now what comes out is the advance estimates for at least for agricultural production, and that fits into the advance estimates of GDP also. It comes out one first advance estimate, second advance estimate, third, fourth, and the final. Final comes in the next, possibly little bit late for policy making. It's good for statistics, but the earlier estimates were actually mostly I estimates. They were, there are local patwaris where there is permanent settlement, that temporary settlement revenue system with British built up. And they would go to the field, they knew the field very well. And in those places like West Bengal and all, where there was permanent settlement, it was more difficult. They have to do some 20% surveying, and in the northeast they would take some chowkidars data. So this was being, there is a National Statistical Commission which was trying to improve the whole system. So what this Fasal scheme was launched under ISRO actually. It is quite old actually, 1987, but we joined much later, in the sense that the first two estimates were entrusted to us with econometric model. So when there is very little data, even satellite cannot pick up. It's a sowing stage. Crops are being sown, yield is far off, and in fact the satellite can catch it much later. Even the field people who went, they took the very subjective view. So econometrics, as I can say, is a very, it can give some kind of objective estimate with standard errors. So and let me say here, in this one we have the partners. First is IEG gives, then gives IMD, Meteorological Department. They have their meteorological models, and then the ISRO. Now ministry has ISRO's one deputation institute. It's called Mohalanavis Crop Forecasting Center. They do the remote sensing. And now actually what my earlier speaker said, econometrics is a word we use in economics. They don't know the word econometrics, but they also use the same statistical methods, regression mainly. So MET model is, they use weather, rainfall, humidity, this kind of data. And in fact, the remote sensing also use some kind of regression models, but with spectral inputs. Econometrics is where we use economic variables also, and I am sure in agriculture that is very important, because there is a minimum support price, there is a market price, so that also gives the incentive to produce. So all this combining, we have this, and then there is consultation within the government of India, and the estimates come out. So we used to give the earliest estimates where, when there is least information, very scarce information, then it would be taken up by our partners. So we had to form for this. What was necessary was a database. As I told you, it was a very painstaking process, and it's becoming easier every day. But we have to continually form a database and it update it and improve it. And then we have to submit our forecast in time. Now the thing is that it's not just economic prices and costs those that matter. I mean, in an econometric model, you have to take account of other variables which affected also. Like I cannot ignore rainfall. I cannot just regress production on price. So I have to correct it for rainfall. If the rainfall is very poor or very high or whatever, it's bad monsoon, then whatever be the price, they cannot produce well. So we have a comprehensive database, and the model is specified in two stages. One is the area equation and the yield equation. Earlier, we had a system of equations and used shear method. You heard of that simultaneous method. This is also one simultaneous method. But now again, we are changing a bit. So we have reverted to least square methods, and the parameters we are choosing based on mainly T statistics, and we look at all the diagnostics, the fit and all that. But very important is validation, that we forecast, we have to leave 1 or 2 years to match the forecast with observed value, which makes our data little bit backdated, but to some extent we have to do it. So we take the crop prices, we have to take the substitute, because the farmer may grow wheat or say rapeseed mustard. It will choose according to whichever crop is more profitable. So we have to identify the substitute crops also, that is those crops which are grown in that area in that season. So because Punjab doesn't grow Rabi rice, but Rabi is winter season, and that Rabi rice is grown in eastern India. Similarly, but they grow in the Kharif season, which is monsoon season, which is followed by wheat cultivation. So we take, and then for crop yield productivity, we need the input. So those prices also, if the price of wheat increases a bit, but price of fertilizer or increases much more, then farmers may not find it profitable to grow wheat if wheat is very demanding of fertilizer. So we have to take the input prices also. Similarly, water is very important for agriculture, and we take the rainfall, monthly rainfall. And today we are also taking other irrigation rainfall like reservoir and groundwater, which is ministry is encouraging us and giving us data also. And temperature is also important in context of climate change, temperature variable and the water variable, because climate change is going to affect rainfall, monsoon circulations very strongly. And not only, I mean, we have to look at the emission, which reducing emission is mitigation, but this is adaptation. That means we have to know early what is the monsoon. As you can see in the last few years, monsoon has not been bad on the average, but it has been very erratic. It comes very early. Sometimes there is some argument with IMD. Sometimes it comes late. We don't, I mean, it's changing. Then we have also considered trend, stochastic trend and actual trend.
Dr. Ghosh, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but ma'am, if you could wrap up over the next 2 minutes, then we could have a little more discussion later. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So we have to validate, and the validation, the last year it has to be less than 5% or something like that. Otherwise, it will. I'm not saying that we always get the forecast very good, but then we have to go back to the drawing board again and see what is going wrong. But of course, there are many field level incidents which we cannot capture very well. So what I was saying is there is a transition going on with this data analytics. Now we have shifted to real-time forecast. It's no longer the first two forecasts, but every month we are having to give the forecast. And in fact, mostly us. I mean, of course, ISRO satellite data is also being made more frequent, but it is more, pressure is more on data analysis. So, and the equation also is becoming more hybrid. As I said, we are now introducing not only rainfall, but water in the reservoir, water in the groundwater level, temperature, pesticide prices, whatnot, labor, everything. And we have to take great help of maps of crop clusters, of reservoirs and rivers, so many other things. So, and it is also, you see, the field part is very much there now, even now, because they bring information every week in the ministry, that what is going on in the field actually from the state governments. But you know, they are also using modern technology, like they have some smartphones with apps, which makes it much more faster and also efficient. And you know, you can check it whether it is true or not with photographs and all that. Then drones are, you know, the talk is going on, they will be sending drones also. And since our model has, and of course you may be knowing that yield data is taken by crop cutting experiments, which is done by NSSO and other such organization. And so this is also, you know, there is some smart sampling going on, which is satellite based. And we of course give yield with our estimation of regression estimations. And that is used for validation, as well as, you know, now it is taking place of the early estimates. Of course the final estimate will be based on these, and you know, the validation will be there, and checking will be there. And this is also kind of you know, combined with PMFBY, which is Prime Minister's Fasal Bima Yojana, which is the crop insurance scheme, where also timely yield data is needed, to pay the farmers indemnities. So what is going on is that we are trying to take advantage of the evolving and emerging technologies and methodologies for accuracy, timeliness, and cost effectiveness. And we need a compilation of information. In fact, the ministry is building a dashboard or a portal, and where the private sector will also be giving the data. And we need a lot of cooperation among states, the federal nature of our countries, other ministries, and the private sector is involved. A lot of computer agencies are involved in making this portal, and many other. And we are also thinking of automation and programming, so we don't have to do the regressions every time. Program will do it and find out which are the variables. And finally, we will also trying to, I mean, everybody, all the partners, including us, trying to use machine learning. And here we might use this bootstrapping and other methods, where, you know, even if we don't have a large data set, we can make more efficient use. So I think, thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh. So with this, you've heard from all the four panelists addressing various aspects of statistics, econometrics, and where the applications lie as of now, and also it has kind of given you an idea about where it might be headed in some of the cases. Now, if I may pick your brain a little bit about a particular area, which is when we talk about macroeconomics, and particularly here because we are talking about the applications in macroeconomics and policy making. So we have seen how the path of macroeconomics as a study has also changed, wherein we have moved towards a microeconomic foundation of macroeconomics, right? And similarly, with the econometric applications in macroeconomics, we are seeing in the recent past how a lot of econometric tools, which like Dr. Pramanik was talking about, which are specifically targeted towards small sample sets, are also seen to be used by macroeconometricians, and then eventually being implemented for a lot of policy making. So if I can get quick inputs from all of you about where do you think this is headed, and how far successful, in your opinion and your experience, has this move been? So may I request Dr. Shalabh to give your inputs first?
Sure. Actually, you see that time is changing. 25 years back, when I was doing my master's and undergraduate, we were simply told the data, when the data will be there, then you can use these tools. So what Professor Ghosh and everybody has emphasized, And for example, the tools which are developed in econometrics and statistics, they are primarily for the small sample. But as I said, that unless and until there is a strong involvement of the mathematics, nobody believes on the outcome. So as soon as we try to model a complicated process, definitely the statistical calculation, statistical algebra becomes very complicated, and then we have to make some sorts of approximation. So one way of approximation the getting the results is that what will happen if the sample size is large. So, well, if you are trying to give a smaller, simpler expression from where, for example, you can compute the standard error of some estimate, but that is valid for the last sample. So you try to estimate from there, try to make make an intelligent guess using your prior experience, information, etc., to translate it to a small sample. So that was happening, but now, as everybody is saying that the data collection has become smart, we are talking of smart sampling. So the sample size is not an issue. The sample size is not even large, but that has become so-called quote unquote big data, where the beginning unit is say like petabytes. So now once again statistics is evolving that how those results which were developed for the small sample can now be implemented for such a huge sample. That is the biggest challenge in which now in the last couple of years the entire world is struggling. So people are trying to evolve different types of methodologies for the big data analysis. And as soon as we call out big data analysis, all this regression framework, logistic regression, etc., all shore model, etc., of this econometric different models, they are the open issues now before us, how to handle those issues. So at this moment, people are trying to work on them, and this is an open field. And I invite all of the who are participating in this conclave to invest your energy in the big data analysis. Your small contribution is going to help this world in a very larger way. So that is how we are heading towards this econometrics to big data econometrics.
Thank
And
you.
frankly speaking, we don't know much as of today.
Right, right. Thank you, Dr. Shalabh. Dr. Amrita Pramanik, if I can pick your brain on this. I know you have been, while you were speaking, you were talking about a lot of examples where, RCTs and they have been very useful in deciding policy implications. But do you see this, kind of, like you said, that it was a bottom to top approach, but do you think it is actually going to have a similar kind of strong effect in the top as well?
Ishita, I would really support the case of individual decision making. See, we have to understand how we as individuals, agents in any market, okay, be it a firm, be it the production side, be it a central planner side, or be it the consumer side, how we accept or how we participate, why we participate, what are the incentive structure that go into a certain kind of decision making. Now, we really cannot, we do have different questions, and different research questions will give us an insight into the difference in methodologies or our approaches that we go ahead with. So, in validating a certain kind of approach, do not invalidate the other kinds of approach. Since we are jumping into the big data wagon right now, we are losing track of the fact that machines do not see what we as human beings are trained or we inculcate as our faculties grow, what we are trained to see or what we are cultured to see. So if we are looking at the data that are showing certain rigidities or certain abnormalities, so that can be somewhere looked over by a machine learning process or a big data processing approach. big data is all fun and very fast, efficient. I really have my full support to that. But when we are looking at individualistic decision-making approach, then we kind of look into the efficiency parameters. Again, I would like to focus on this issue that we have to, we cannot only teach and not judge the circumstances that rule a student's acceptability of a certain kind of a learning model. We cannot disassociate ourselves from the decision maker's choice or the incentive structure that rules that kind of an acceptability approach. So definitely, a trend can be generated out of big data or that kind of AI approaches to data handling. But if you're looking at conclusive decision-making, approaches, then I think the way to go forward with is more kind of detailed exploration of the decision maker's choice, how they might be incentivized or motivated by, like, for example, one individual might be motivated, an employee of a firm might be motivated by pecuniary or rewards. Obviously, the money matters. But after a certain level, we do not see much impact of the monetary rewards. We see that social incentives, prestige incentives, rewards of different kinds, fairness, equality, reciprocity. These things come into play. So why not give enough space to explore those aspects and go ahead with them?
So Amrita, I think you have kind of softened the blow for people who have been continuously thinking that AI and ML will take away people's job, right? So the human factor and the significance and the importance of that in policy making would still remain, and it would hold its own place. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Actually,
Thank you
Ishita, I can just add to what you just said, that now at this stage, we are looking for people who can do the finite sample statistics as well as those who can use AI ML, and we are not getting the expertise.
Right. That's
So this
absolutely.
has, so AI ML has doubled or same or that triple the scope of econometrics.
Now, Shalabh sir might be very frequent, with this kind of a situation where we will notice in the students their expertise in certain kind of handling of a software, but they do not really know how to explain or interpret certain the results from that
Precisely
software.
so.
So it gives you results, but how you interpret it, how you policy include that interpretation, that is up to a human mind, and we have to cultivate that.
Yes.
So,
No confusion actually. In fact, to all the students, I can share with you, when an MBA student comes to us for a presentation, he or she simply tells us, okay, the Sure model gave this. But when our own students comes, he said, and then we ask, forget about the software, tell me what software is doing in the background. And we are badly needing such people who knows what is happening behind the software. I completely agree with you
absolutely.
without any discussion.
So to all our listeners also here, all those who are present here, so you will notice that the way all the panelists, we decided to put the topic across to you was to give you a more of a conceptual and the algorithm behind how policy making will become more effective or how it works out right now. So of course, we understand how the software is there, definitely, because it simply makes our lives easier with the calculations. But ultimately, it's the students of econometrics and the practitioners who will have to decide and tell that software what methodology to use, how to treat the data, and then apply the methodology. And once the results are in front of us, to make sense of that in a way, that will become effective in deciding how policies should be directed and how it should move around. So I think all of us absolutely are on the same page with that.
Ishita, if you allow me, I can just say whatever you have said just in one word.
Absolutely, sir.
To all the students, first decide yourself what you want to be, a doctor or a compounder. That's all. It will give you all the answers what Ishita is trying to say. That is up to you.
Absolutely. Dr. Ghosh, can we have your comments on the discussion that is going on right now?
Uh, I can understand this, as I said, this is a transition period, and so many things are there. We are at a sort of many contradictions are facing us. Since I work in the middle of it, combining both, so I think we have now place for both. See, I have been working for many years, and several times they wanted to us to give the model, but they also said that it needs human insight, because where is the I mean, policy is going, international market is going, something, you have to all the time keep up also. That is also there. But at one point, it is true that we can also give it over whatever I'm thinking. If I can put it into computer language, maybe it will be possible. It is a very long way off. We need good people for that. And as for you see macroeconomics, I think uh, um, the first speaker spoke on it, and there are so many complicated models, VAR model, and this and that, and particularly the CG model is there, where it's like a black box to us. I'm not a macroeconomist specifically, but we don't understand what is going on there. So programming is like.
Dr. Ghosh, I think we lost you.
Invest research, I bought a
Dr.
TV
Goyari?
for my children.
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you now.
That lady was very free to do her business. So these are so many complex questions come in, but maybe if one day we can build the big data in the true way, like incorporating the macro, incorporating the micro, everything, and there are people to understand from there, that will be the best benefit. But it is a long way off.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ghosh. Dr. Goyari?
Thank you, Ishita. I agree with what co-panelists have said. I also think now in this era where data are available, big sample or large sample, and calculation methods are available, software packages are available. But what I feel is interpretation of estimated results are very, very important. On the same set of data, the way I will interpret, get the results, and if another person, my own supervisor, my own professor, if he or she, if they are interpreting, it will be different. So based on these interpretations, the quality of paper and policy recommendations may change. So that is why the art of result interpretations, everybody has to learn. Not only young students, even senior professors. I am learning, I have been learning. I think everybody has to learn, everybody has to improve. That is my idea. Thank you.
Absolutely.
May I put in one thing? Yeah, it is a totally learning process now going on, and we have to be very open-minded also. Like, we cannot put ourselves in a box. Tomorrow, that is why the real time is important. Tomorrow, today there is a corona. Tomorrow there is a Ukraine war. So everything affects. So we just can't go by model from past. We have to keep our eyes and ears open.
Ishita,
One line I can say, nobody can replace the humans and natural intelligence by artificial intelligence. Human will remain the supreme.
Right, sir.
Ishita, just
Amrita,
yes. Yeah. There is always a shift in our research approaches. It's very interesting to deal with partial equilibrium framework. What do I mean by that? You're looking at a market from a specific angle, from the production side, separated out from the consumption side, separated out from the other aspects of social planners perspective as well. It's very interesting because it's very convenient and it gives a very microscopic and intense view of the situation. But in practicality, in real time, you have to understand that all these things work together, and it would be very relevant to take a holistic view. So an individual agent takes a decision under all these environmental activities and not ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus is a theoretical assumption. It does not work out in real time. So we have to incorporate those factors, and we have to just control for those factors and induce try to achieve a kind of result that is insightful. So whenever these set of control variables change, the environmentally controlled variables change, we have to also incorporate their impact and their role in the decision maker's choice. So all these approaches again give me a strong ground to support the fact that decision making or study of the decision making theory is has a very crucial impact on every level, even at the macro policy making level. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that takes
absolutely.
Me right.
Yes, I think this also touches upon, let's say, what Dr. Shalabh was saying right at the beginning, that what let's say is taught in a classroom and then what we get to see in practice quite naturally, particularly for social sciences like ours, is something very rampant. And so many times in our classrooms, time goes into demystifying all of these things, right? That students are so caught up in those assumptions that they get to see in front of them, that is defining the model and the framework, and they start questioning then, why are we even studying all this, because these assumptions are not going to hold true in the real world. But again, that's what we need to emphasize over and over again, that this is
that generates a ground for comparative statics. We have to argue, well, this is the ideal situation and this is where we deviate. So we have to have that ideal situation in mind.
Correct. So then typically, how we proceed, like the static analysis, comparative static, and then you move on to the dynamic. So I think that's what is the key towards our econometric analysis and the evolving econometrics as well. So I think I'm going to leave everyone with that note. And now for the next, the Q&A
Can I just share one example? I think possibly that will answer your question to many students. Yes. In my class, many students ask me the same question, which Dr. Ghoshal just said, that this assumption is not met, this is not happening. And above all, why should I study this topic? I can share my own example. During my MSc, we have the topic of topology. And yeah, at that moment, I couldn't understand. Somehow, as a student, I just managed to get the marks in those things. Now it is 25 years. Now, at that time, means getting a sample of size 20 was a dream. Now, when we have the samples of 20 petabytes, now last year, I think before COVID, University of Heidelberg had started a program on big data analysis where they tried to contact different IITs to work with them. And while discussing with them, do you know the idea that came to our mind, that which is going to solve the big data analysis, is the use of topology. If I can translate all statistics to a topological space, possibly we can have all the statistical tools to deal with the big data analysis. So my simple answers to all the students who are present here is that when this binary number system was evolved, nobody knew that entire internet and entire means electricity, EE, etc., that is going to be based only on binary number system. So try to think the problem from the fundamental point of view. These are the basic concepts during your classes. And as we teach, we try to emphasize on the concepts, try to learn it, have faith on your teachers that what they are trying to teach you, that will be useful, if not tomorrow, then after 25 years. And that is the mistake I made. You please don't make this mistake. Thank you.
Right. So we are going to leave the students with that strain of thought. And for now, for the Q&A session, I'm going to hand over to Sakshi, I think. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Mihir and Mitali will take over for the Q&A session. Mihir, you can come now.
Uh, sure, so it was really an insightful session to all of us. And students who are having questions can raise their hands. Yes, Faisal, you may go ahead.
Hello everyone, thank you for such an insightful session. And my question is, can econometrics help us in building models which can help during a time of pandemic?
Yes, I can give you the answer. I think if you go through the Google and type the fourth wave of COVID and try to type my name, for the last 1 week, I'm struggling. We have done some statistical analysis. Only on the basis of statistics, I'm expecting that we may have a fourth wave in July. This may change because that is based on statistics, point estimation, confidence intervals estimation, etc. Now, the same thing happens to your econometrics also. These are based on forecasting techniques. Forecasting, as soon as you become closer to the event, that will become more accurate. But at this moment, people try to take this statistical forecasting as if the God's word. No, they are the guidelines. They are simply the guidelines we have to prepare ourselves that if it happened, then how are we going to do it? That is the same way you prepare for your final examination. So that is why statistics and econometrics, these are the topics which are helping the nation and the country in making the policies, and based on that only they are trying to take the decision for the whole country.
If I may add to that, Vaishali, you will see, I think Dr. Mathur from IIT Kanpur again and a team with him, they have been building predictive models right after the first wave. And what they did was they took kind of the level of infections and recovery and so many other social factors into consideration while they built their model in order to kind of predict whether the numbers would go down or by how much and so on. And similarly, there's another team working with, I think, Dr. Neeraj Hatekar, where also they have been doing a lot of dynamic analysis in order to understand the impact of these pandemics in the social science structure and also certain forecasting methods. So yes, definitely the tools that are available, they are being utilized to make sense of the pandemic and to see how we can again come out of it. The kind of recovery, let's say, the V-shaped or the K-shaped and so on. So all of those discussions were based on sound econometric analysis.
Yes. For example, you might have heard about this Sutra model, SUTRA, Sutra model from Professor Phanindra Goyari of IIT Kanpur. The government has accepted it as a role model. So that is based on statistics only. Statistics means econometrics for me. For me, statistics and econometrics both are the same thing. Yeah, without statistics, you can't escape.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Akansha, you may go ahead with your question.
A very good evening. My question was how we know that econometrics is highly reliant on raw data. And it's not always the case that this raw data has a causal explanation. So what do you think might be the way forward in the future to bridge the gap between these models that are formulated and their practical applications, especially in policy making?
Ishita, can I reply?
Yes, yes, sure. The floor is open.
Sure. You could see, many people think that getting a model means fill the data in an Excel file, import it to the software, and do some click. It is not like that. Whenever the data comes, first we have to understand how the data is coming. then we have to use, then we have to first think that what type of suitable model can be used. There are different possibilities. For example, in the beginning, Ishita was talking about logistic regression, continuous variable, the discrete variable, and dichotomous variable, etc. So looking at the structure of the data, you have to think of an appropriate model from your knowledge. Then you have to try. There is no guarantee that it is going to work well. But then whatever the model gives you, you try to verify it, what is really happening in the practice. So you have to hold the hand of the model, and then you have to see, because you can see what is happening in the model, and then you have to verify it, what your mathematical model is telling. Based on that, either you try to improve that model, or you try to opt for some other approaches. And then finally, after a big struggle, you have to come up with a single model which is going to work with to explain that process. So how many models you have tried before arriving to that model, nobody knows. Nobody knows in the world. So people simply think that, okay, you have just taken a regression model, click, click, click here, and then this is the good model. No, you have to work many, many months to get a good model.
Shalabh sir is very right. I'll just chip in for a bit. Akansha, does the data come to you or you go to the data? What's your perspective? Do you work towards a certain set of data or it comes to you? Is it like an Einstein's apple? It falls on your lap? Your choice of data is based on the question you are asking, Akansha.
Yeah.
So you have to study the nature of the data. So you find out what's your research question. You understand what kind of data you need to support your central hypothesis, and accordingly choose the data. So even if it's a raw data, you select the data yourself. There is again it's your decision making as a researcher, what kind of data you want to choose. And then when you have the data, you have to definitely judge on the basis of the nature or characterization of the data, and on the basis of what your central hypothesis is, what kind of methodology you need to go ahead. That insight will be available in the literature. So you have to go through a little processing of the data of the literature, and then boil upon the idea of adopting a particular technique, a particular methodology to go ahead in answering your central hypothesis.
I think she asked
just
a
by
basic
looking
question
at this.
also. Excuse me. She asked a basic question on the raw data also. Now, the raw data, as you explained that, what data will you go to, or what data will come to you? There is a primary data system where you go and collect it, whatever you need. Not all data are available in published form, and whatever the ministries, governments are giving you are secondary data, and they are full. They used to be full of mistakes also, but now they have improved. As I emphasize, they are trying all way out to improve and make it internationally compatible also. But then most data you don't get, you have to go and take, or you make a lab, like RCT is kind of social science lab.
Yeah.
So
you're generating data within a lab controlled environment. Yeah.
And also, if I may just add in one more aspect of this, that so many times we see that probably the question as a researcher, the kind of question that we are seeking answer to, it requires the kind of data which is not available readily, and you need to go out and collect it. But at times, doing that at the level that you might want the question to be answered also becomes difficult. So then maybe you need to revisit your question based on the kind of data that you might see is feasible to collect. So for collecting data, see, it would probably be very difficult to collect national level primary data unless you have a kind of funding to take on that kind of a project. So then in those kind of stages, people might want to revisit the level of the question. So then you try to answer the question, but not maybe at the national level, but maybe at a regional or a local level where it is possible for you to get the raw data based on which then you can choose your methodology and move on.
This is a sad truth that you have to to some extent mold your question according to the data.
Right,
Maybe.
right.
Yeah, so at least primary data gives you a way out, but national level data, some agencies only take this NSS and all, but they will not give you all the data.
All of it, right, right.
I think now we are coming to the problem, as Nilabja ma'am has said, that there is quite a gap between the researcher and the data set. So that is dependent on an infrastructure of data. Now, US data, we have seen how well equipped that space is. Unfortunately, in developing country like ours, we do not have that privilege. So that restrains us as researchers, as policymakers.
So many times.
Actually, Amrita, that is actually a culture. That's a culture. The culture in our country has to be changed. For example, many people come to me with some data. Say, tomorrow I have to submit my thesis. Can you please analyze it? This culture has to be changed. You have to conduct a study. Sometimes we get even from the government of India that tomorrow I think Dr. Ghosh might be facing being staying in Delhi, that tomorrow some minister wants to know how much yield we are going to get for this crop in the next 2 years, etc., etc. And they would like to have the answer in the next 2 hours.
That is true.
Yeah. And then, but then the same people, when they will go to the doctor, and if the doctor gives the diagnosis in 1 minute, they will say the doctor is not good. The doctor has not examined us properly. So this is actually a question which is related to the basic culture, and that is what government is trying to do. Now they are trying to expose the students right from a beginning about this statistics.
Also,
there are many complications, like our agricultural data. See, as I told you, the crop yield data, there is usually some conflict between center and state. This doesn't seem to be good, but the state gives, but you have to take it also, because agriculture is a state subject. But thing is, if there is some incentive given on good performance, they will show it higher. Then if there is an insurance program there, the crop yield tends to be lower. So you have to get over all this. With some attempt, the culture changing has started a bit, but it's very difficult.
Misrepresentation of data.
Good that they are. Yes, sorry. Please, yeah.
No, so I was just trying to point out that misrepresentation of data is we have to always kind of take it with a pinch of salt when we are looking at
yes. Always. And it is actually good that there are problems in the data. Otherwise, I will be the first one who will lose the job.
Also, so many times when we are looking at disaggregated data, there also we face a similar kind of problem. The data is just not there.
The data regulation is again an issue, Ishita. This is something that in my personal researches I have come across very randomly, very rampantly. So, you cannot take up a topic and, some things are very sensitive. So if you are, for example, I'm I have been working in this field of surrogacy laws for some time and contract theoretic approach to that. So recently, this surrogacy regulations bill, prohibiting completely prohibiting commercial surrogacy has been initiated in December. It has been enacted in December 2021. So, but look at the situation. Are we really ready for that kind of an enactment of the bill? We are not, absolutely, because there is no infrastructure that really implements. So the act does not exist beyond paper. So, but when I had gone to the field, there is least total non-availability of data, because data regulation is again so sensitive as an issue. If you are going for primary data, you have to take that into perspective, that there is a lot of situations where sensitive data is involved, and you have to, that's the kind of skill that the researcher cultivates in procuring the data. So you have to frame your question in very articulate, but very sensitive in your articulation again. So that's how we have to take the data, where data is not so revealing in itself.
Amrita,
One example of
similarly,
secondary data problem is the crime. If a state has very high crime, it's very bad. And a state reports very low crime level, very good. But it may be that
Right.
the higher
Yes.
crime is actually they are
absolutely,
having good data
Absolutely.
report.
absolutely.
Right. And that
Also,
does not reflect on the crime situation of any state. Reporting or
correct.
not reporting does not reflect the real situation. Actually, there might be some states who are not reporting at all.
At all, yeah, yeah.
Right. So, and that cannot guarantee that the state is free of crime. So, that's a very
So, similarly,
futile kind of a conclusion.
another, the biggest example that we see in macro as well, or when we, let's say you try to collect data on people's income, we just never ever get the answers, right? And that's why we resort to not those pinpoint numbers, but then intervals, because that is
Kind of employment, what employment, how many days of employment, and
correct,
all of those
correct. All of
approaches.
those, you would be
Roundabout approaches
proxying.
of the questionnaire.
Yeah, you would be proxying those information to kind of reach at an approximation of what the income could be. It's all then that approximation could be far away from the
This
actual income.
approximation cannot be generated out of a machine learning device. Like, we cannot go ahead with artificial intelligence until it is fed with enough information. We have to guarantee that enough information is fed into the programming of artificial intelligence system to generate that kind of a specific and precise forecasting tool.
Right, right. So, Akanksha, I hope we have been able to answer your question at various levels.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Possibly too many speakers may spoil your answer also. Because everybody is thinking in a different way.
So it seems no other students has any question. So I would like to invite Komal to give a thank you note.
Thank you, Mihir. So we'd like to extend our gratitude to all the panelists for a wonderful and informative session on increasing relevance of econometrics for macroeconomic policy making in the data-driven world as the third panel discussion of Anvay. On behalf of Team Horizon, Detonic, FinServ, and the whole institute, we thank you for your time and insights into the topic and for sharing your vast experience with the students. We feel fortunate to have had such a diverse panel. We eagerly look forward to further collaboration and mentorship from your side. With this, we finally come to an end to the first edition of Anvay, the Annual Analytics Conclave of IIM Sirmaur. Without some people, this event wouldn't be a success. So we would like to thank our director, ma'am, IT team, accounts department, Professor Amrendra Singh, Professor Parul Malik, and Professor Muhammad Hussain Kundu, and all the members of Horizon, Detonics, and FinServ who wholeheartedly contributed in this event. Thank you. See you all in the next edition of Anvay.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you all the panelists for being here today and having such a knowledgeable session. And actually, it was great interacting with you guys, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for
Thank you.
having me.
Yeah,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
everybody.
Students can wait. We'll be sending the quiz form here, and you'll have 10 minutes for the same. Yogi, if you could send the quiz form here.
Yes, just a second. Sarvasiddhi will send it in the Q&A session.
Yogi, you could send it in the chat box. I guess there's a problem with the Q&A.
Yes, I've sent it to all the attendees.
Cool. Once you all are done with the quiz, you can drop your roll number and name in the chat box and leave.